Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to look at the difference between chemical and mineral sunscreens and why you should consider using mineral sunscreen. I'm going to try something a little bit different today. I'm going to be working on the board for today's video, so let's dive right into it. The first thing I'd like to look at in order for you all to have a frame of reference for the chemistry we're going to go over is the chemical process or organic process that organic or chemical sunscreens undergo called free radical chain reactions, which I'll put here on the board. You hear a lot of people in the skincare and sunscreen communities talk about the danger of free radicals, and I want to clear up any confusion or mystery around this from a chemistry student's perspective. Now, just to be clear, free radicals just refer to lone electrons on an atom, which can interact with other molecules in a very dangerous manner. So in this case, we're going to look at it regarding sunscreen chemical molecules. So there are 3 steps to any free radical reaction. Our first one is initiation. The second is what we call propagation, or the continuation process, so it's just a continuous cycle of reactions. And then the third step is what we call termination, which is just the ending of the free radical chain reaction. So initiation is the first step of any radical reaction, which is commonly carried out with UV light as seen in organic chemistry. The goal or result of initiation is to form at least one chemical species that has unpaired electrons, or what we are calling free radicals. The first step is also called homolysis, meaning the singular breakdown of a molecule into pieces. So let's say we have molecule X, Y, where X is bonded to Y, that undergoes change with UV light, denoted by this delta symbol or triangle. Radical reactions, we depict the movement of single electrons by using fishhook arrows. And this results in molecule X with free radical and molecule Y with a free radical. So now we have formed radicals, as they are referred to, which, like I have said, is just a lone electron causing an unstable molecule. So now that we've gone over initiation, let's dive into propagation. So the second stage of a chain reaction is propagation, which is a series of 2 or more steps that generate a product and regenerate a radical. So this can be a continuous process. So let's go over an example together. Here we will have a chlorine atom with a free radical, and let's say that this is from chlorinated ocean water, for example, and atmospheric methane. So let me get this up here on the board, and we can go into the next step. And here we see under UV light, the chlorine is going to bond to a hydrogen from the methane. And this produces a radical carbon molecule, overall creating a new radical. Here you see we have 2 different radicals in this process, but we are propagating or continuing the overall process of radical production. Now, the final stage of radical chain reactions is called termination, which occurs whenever 2 radicals combine with each other and stop the propagation process. Another way to put this is 2 radicals form a non-radical molecule, or we can think about it as a non-radical species. So let's look at an example of a termination reaction to see how the chain reaction ends. Let's say we have molecule W and Z, which are free radicals. They will react to form a bond, which forms a new molecule WZ, which ends this process as we now have no free radicals. But this molecule, for example, could undergo initiation and the cycle can start all over again. So now that you understand how free radicals work, I'd like to give you all a general overview of various chemical sunscreen molecules that you should look out for in your sunscreen. While I'm drawing these molecules, I'll also give a general overview of some scientific research and literature for sunscreen data and information on chemical sunscreens. So be sure to check out the description box to read anything that I reference in the video if you would like more information. The second molecule that is commonly used is avobenzone. Now, what I want you to notice in all of these molecules is the substituent, or what we call a functional chemical group called the ketone. So this is the oxygen, or the O symbol, that you see here on the board, that is double bonded. You see those two lines coming off the O, bonded to a carbon or a vertex in the molecule that you're seeing here. I know many of you are not familiar with organic chemistry, or probably will never take it, so I like to just break down these basic points for you to be able to identify these compounds and have some general knowledge about them and why they are important to watch out for. So don't worry if you're not understanding everything that I'm saying. The third molecule we have is homosalate, and in just a moment I'll move the molecule around to draw it in full, just in case you're not sure what I'm doing. What's really interesting is that the FDA states that nearly all of these sunscreen active ingredients have limited or no data characterizing their absorption. So while we do know these absorb UV light, there is not a lot of data on any of this really showing these different chemical reactions or processes and what they do with our bodies. So we do have some general knowledge, but like I said, we have limited or no data characterizing the absorption of many of these compounds. The fourth molecule is octinoxate. In 2019 and 2020, the FDA published two studies showing that the ingredients oxybenzone, octinoxate, octisalate, octocrylene, homosalate, and avobenzone are all systematically absorbed into the body after a single use. And this research study was reported and conducted by Matta in 2019 and Matta in 2020. Now, some of these I just went over, you haven't seen yet, but I will draw. So don't worry if you're not sure if I have gone over them yet, I will in just a moment. The FDA also found that the sunscreen ingredients could be detected on the skin and in blood weeks after the application ended, which was reported by Matta in 2020. That is something to consider in this process of using chemical sunscreens, is that these molecules enter into your body's system instead of protecting your skin. Now, I'll go over later in the video how chemical sunscreens do work, but they are temporarily effective, but not worth using long term. Now that I've drawn octisalate, let's take a look at octocrylene. Here I'm drawing octocrylene, which is really a monster of a molecule in my opinion. It is readily absorbed into your skin and can accumulate within your body just like the previous molecules I mentioned, but its structure is definitely worth appreciating and taking a look at, which you'll see in just a moment. On top of the fact that octocrylene can be toxic to the environment, where if worn in the ocean can cause mutation to sea life such as coral. Something really interesting that we should take into consideration when using these different formulas is if other countries have banned their ingredients, or other provinces or states, for example. So the US Virgin Islands have actually banned the use of oxybenzone, octinoxate, and octocrylene, which you see me drawing here. Now, the next most worrisome and probably more talked about, like avobenzone, is oxybenzone, which can cause allergic skin reactions. And this was reported by Rodriguez in 2006. The CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, routinely detect oxybenzone in more than 96% of Americans. Study participants who reported using sunscreen have higher oxybenzone exposures, and this was reported by Zamowski in 2015. In an evaluation of CDC collected exposure data for American children, researchers found that adolescent boys with higher oxybenzone measurements had significantly lower testosterone levels, and this was reported by Sensing Curiello in 2016. I'm sorry if I mispronounced any of these names. Now that I have gone over the chemical active ingredients, I also want to go over some inactive ingredients that are used in organic or chemical sunscreens that are also very harmful for you and that you should watch out for in the ingredients list in your sunscreens, which I will go over later in the video how to identify these different ingredients in your sunscreens. So the two molecules I'm going to go over here are methyl isothiazolinone and methylchloroisothiazolinone. So these are sister molecules, or what we could say are really similarly related molecules. The only difference is that the methylchloroisothiazolinone, or I'll call it MCIT, it has a chlorine bonded to it, which you'll see in just a moment. So both of these molecules are used as chemical preservatives, meaning that these compounds are used to prevent any sort of growth within the formula. So just like food can mold over time, or makeup can get old over time, the same thing goes for sunscreen and skincare. So these are used as chemical preservatives to prevent the growth of fungus, of bacteria, and other microorganisms, which I'll go over. So overall, for more biological terms, they're really effective at killing most aerobic and anaerobic bacteria, and this is just due to the chemical properties of them. However, what's notable about these is that many people have been diagnosed with an allergy for these compounds. So they have been linked to lung toxicity, allergic reaction, and possible neurotoxicity. So you can look these compounds up. Just plug them into your search engine and you will see horrible rashes and psoriasis looking skin that is just absolutely horrible, and people have just gotten that from using sunscreens. They have these reactions. Chemical burns is what I'm trying to say. So chemical burns have been reported for these molecules, which is horrible in my opinion, that they are still being used as preservatives. So definitely watch out for all of these active chemical ingredients as well as the inactive ones. So now that you have an overview of how free radical reactions work and a list of chemical sunscreen molecules to look out for and avoid, or rather what to look for in a molecule to avoid as an active ingredient, let's look at the free radical chemical reaction of avobenzone with UV light as it would be used as sunscreen. So here you can already see I'm drawing avobenzone just like I did before, and we are going to react it with UV light, or the symbols HNu or HV as you'll see it here, which is just the expression for light in science. So I will put in parentheses here UV light so this makes sense. Now I'll demonstrate light like we do in chemistry with this little squiggly arrow going to the ketone like we talked about earlier. So remember, it's that oxygen double bonded to the carbon. And now I'll have a squiggly line in the products, just meaning that this molecule beyond this point isn't of concern for us. So of course the whole molecule is important, but I'm just going to look at the right side where I'm interacting the light with the ketone. So hopefully that makes sense for you as you're looking at this. Just remember that past this point it's not of concern for us necessarily. Now here you see free radicals in the oxygen and the carbon, which I am going to highlight here. Now what happens if we look at this molecule on our skin and what it does to our DNA? As we all know, we can get skin cancer from UV exposure, but also from damaging our DNA. So here again, just going over this one more time, you can see we have free radicals on the oxygen and the carbon. So now these free radicals are ready to react with our DNA, and specifically we're talking about our skin cells, because skin has DNA, as we all know, but sometimes we just need to go over that so that we can reiterate that fact. So here, drawing the product again with the free radicals, what I'm going to do is draw a DNA molecule next to it. Now this is going to be a pretty inaccurate drawing, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So let me draw this out. So I'm going to draw the backbone here, and then I'm going to draw the base pairing with the lines in between the backbone. So we have this double helix DNA here. And like I said, this isn't accurately drawn, but this is just for the demonstration of this reaction. So this is DNA, like I've marked here. And what we're going to look at is the free radical on the avobenzone is going to react with an atom or a molecule and the DNA, and it is going to oxidize it, or it's going to cause it to lose electrons. So the free radical is going to steal an electron from the DNA to create a bond in the avobenzone molecule to get that ketone stability back. So we don't want a single bonded oxygen, we want to have the ketone back. So here in parentheses I put O for oxidation like we do in organic chemistry. And Just going over again, it's going to lose, DNA is losing electrons, so it's giving that electron back to the avobenzone molecule. Just to reiterate again, the free radical, I say steals an electron, it's just causing the electron to bond with it from the DNA. So now that free radical steals an electron from the DNA to create that bond to get the stability back. So what we see here is that the avobenzone does this to become a more stable molecule, but causes DNA to become damaged. And this can happen in so many different ways. I'm just going to demonstrate this with a broken backbone and our double helix. So you see here the backbone of the DNA has been broken, and this can actually cause mutations in the DNA. So the products are damaged DNA and then a stabilized molecule from this free radical reaction. So we have an organic chemical component and DNA from our bodies. And then I will just draw the simplified avobenzone, so just the right side, where we now have regained the ketone stability back. So just keep in mind that this is something that happens. So let's say if you have avobenzone in your sunscreen as an active ingredient, this is a possible chemical reaction that it can undergo. So just know that this is relevant information. I'm not just showing random chemical reactions. So many of you may be wondering, what does damaged DNA do to our bodies? So I'm going to cover just some basic biology points, as this video is for a wider audience and I want a large range of people who don't have a science background to understand, have some takeaways from this. So one point is that the damaged DNA actually leads to the mutation of our genes due to the transformation of our cells. As we all know, cells are the fundamental unit of life in all of our bodies. And here we're particularly looking at skin cells, or initially looking at skin cells. Now, another important point is that mutated cells can then divide uncontrollably, replacing dying damaged cells with precancerous cells. So if you would like me to make another video on this topic, just let me know and I'd be happy to expand on these points. But again, like I said, I just want a general audience to have this overall understanding. So just to reiterate that point, we're going to see that mutated cells will then divide uncontrollably by replacing dying damaged cells with precancerous cells. So you're not automatically getting cancer just because of this damaged DNA, but there is the possibility that because a cell has been mutated, it is then precancerous. Then it can further mutate and become a cancerous cell. So I do want to reiterate that point and make that very clear. So here you'll see I'll underline precancerous cells. Okay, so let's highlight both of these because these are just some two main basic takeaways. This is not all the information and all the possibility, but these are the two most important that I want all of you to understand. So now that we understand damaged DNA mutates our genes and can cause precancerous cells to form, okay, so let's highlight both of these because these are just some two main basic takeaways. This is not all the information and all the possibility, but these are the two most important that I want all of you to understand. So now that we understand damaged DNA mutates our genes and can cause precancerous cells to form, let's look at a basic diagram of how chemical sunscreens interact with our skin under UV light from the sun. So what does this look like? So let's draw a diagram here. So the big takeaway of chemistry I want you all to understand with chemical sunscreens is that they turn UV rays into of light or heat. However, while they absorb the light, the UV rays still penetrate into our skin layers. Okay, so let me say that one more time. UV rays are turned into non-damaging wavelengths of light or heat. However, while the molecules absorb the light and can initially be non-damaging wavelengths, the UV rays can still penetrate into our skin layers. So there's only so many chemical reactions that a molecule can undergo. It can only be stable so long for. So I'm not saying that they do not work. It's just the fact that they undergo these reactions which can harm our DNA. So they can protect you, they can prevent sunburn, but it's that underlying chemistry that is going on that I really want to emphasize in this video. So now I want to draw the skin layers of our body, just the basic overview of skin layers. And then I want to draw a little bit of a diagram to see how this works. So let's draw out the layers here. And I'm going to go ahead and color each layer so that you can identify it. So the bottom-most layer, the lowest layer, is going to be our fat, or more scientifically referred to as subcutaneous tissue. Above the subcutaneous tissue, we then have our dermis, and then we have the epidermis and the skin surface, which I will highlight in just a moment. Like I said, there are so many more components to our skin that I'm not incorporating into this diagram. This is just a general overview for the sake of this specific diagram, so I do want to emphasize that. If any of you do call me out on that, I am aware of that. I just want to do a general overview here. So here we see the dermis, and then above this we have the epidermis, and then above that we're going to have what I'm going to refer to as the skin surface. So the skin surface that I'm going to draw here, this is the skin that you can see when you look at your body. This is what you have visibility to see. So if you look at your arm, for example, that is your skin surface, so the topmost layer of your skin. Now, let's say we have the sun out in the sky, we're outside on a sunny day, we've applied a chemical sunscreen with any of the active ingredients that we discussed previously. So the sun has 3 UV components. We have UVA, B, and C light. Now we're most concerned with UVA and B because that's what penetrates the skin surface. So while the UVB and UVA light is absorbed by these molecules, we now know that this absorption causes free radical chain reactions, where the UVB rays will penetrate all the way to the dermis, and then the UVA rays can penetrate all the way through the epidermis. So it goes all the way past your skin surface. So while you applied it to your skin surface, it goes past that because it doesn't fully absorb and it reacts. Okay, so now let's take a look at how the mineral sunscreens interact with the sun. So the main takeaway is that the mineral sunscreens prevent UV rays from hitting the skin at all. The goal of these compounds is to scatter the UV light and prevent penetration into the skin, as we see here. And the 2 main types of mineral active ingredients you'll see in sunscreen are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. Now that you know about chemical active ingredients, I actually want to take a look at the ingredients on an actual product. So put some sunscreen labels up on the board here so that you can actually do this for yourself. So here on this first example, we see avobenzone, octocrylene, and oxybenzone are all very important. We want to avoid any of these chemical active ingredients regardless of these other positive attributes in the sunscreen. Now, looking at an example of a mineral sunscreen, here we have both active ingredients of titanium dioxide as well as zinc oxide, which is absolutely fantastic, and that's becoming more and more common actually to use both of them in a sunscreen, but either or is fine, both is even better. And this is what I want you to look for in your sunscreens, and added bonus is if it's vegan and if it's cruelty-free, if you have the option and access to these types of products. Now, while it says it contains organic ingredients, which I will highlight in just a moment, it's referring to the oils that are used to help with the texture and the application of the sunscreen. So here you can see in blue we have both of the oxides, and then I will also circle here in the smaller writing that it contains organic ingredients, but like I said, if you look closer at the description, it's just referring to the other components in it. Overall, we want to avoid these chemical sunscreens and use mineral active ingredient sunscreen. So I'm going to cross out these chemical sunscreens on the top because this is what we do not want to use in case you're confused. I'm going to do a green check over the mineral ingredients because this is what we do want to use. Thank you for watching today's video. Let me know in the comments if there are any topics or concepts that you would like me to go over, and I would be happy to do that.